Happy to be joined by Danny Kortchmar. He's a songwriter, a producer, a musician, a singer, a guitar player. You've done a little bit of everything. Danny, welcome first of all. And that's kind of where I wanted to start is you've been in this game, the music business for a long time. I don't know if you approached it at the beginning as I'm getting into the music business. I'm just getting into music. So when you got into it, is this how you wanted it to play out, where you had your hand in a little bit of everything?
Well, I didn't have a master plan. I just wanted to play. My main ambition was to play with my heroes.
Yeah.
Was to play music with my heroes. As for the difference between music and the music business, I loathe the music business. I don't like it at all, and I'm not good at it. I like music, but not the music business. And I think a lot of musicians feel that way.
Yeah, and I think the answer is probably fairly inherent, but can you describe the difference between music and the music business?
The music business is a business. A
Yeah.
lot of people in it are in it because, well, you don't need any training or any specific skill to be in the music business. You can be a lawyer, an accountant. It doesn't mean you have to know anything about music. And I'm interested in music. I'm only interested in music. Of course, I want to make money and I want to do well, but the other part of it is sucking up to people that you don't particularly like, and being popular with record execs and A&R men, and some of whom are very nice, and some of whom are big assholes. And at that point, I don't feel the need to be nice to people I don't like, or to try to win over people. I'm not good at that. That's not my area of expertise. My area of expertise is coming up with good parts for songs.
Absolutely. I think yeah, that's a really good philosophy to have. So, what got you into music? I'm sure it was as when you were a young person, something struck your ear. What was that particularly? Is there a moment?
Well, I grew up in the first generation of rock and roll. As soon as that stuff came on the radio, as soon as it went from Perry Como and Andy Williams and Patty Page to Little Richard and Elvis Presley, I'm in. First time I heard Good Golly Miss Molly by Little Richard, that was it. My life changed that moment. And the same with Elvis, Don't Be Cruel and Hound Dog. That changed my life. And I said, I love this. But that was like 8 years old. By the time I was 10 years old, my mother bought me a cheap guitar and I sat down and struggled with it and finally learned those three chords with which you can play every rock and roll song. And that's when the heavens parted, and I never looked back.
Yeah. And you talked about playing music with your heroes. It just turned out that you ended up getting to play music with just about everybody's heroes in the music business, and that started with James Taylor. So, and that took you everywhere, I think. What was the genesis of starting to work with him, and what was the plan there? Was there beginning to be some sort of plan for yourself in the business in music? Sorry.
Well, James and I were boyhood pals. I met him when I was 13 or 14, and we used to hang out together. And then we realized we liked the same kind of music. We had a lot of similarities in the way we were brought up and what our parents valued culturally. And we just started playing. It was obvious to me right away when first time I heard him sing, I realized, boy, this guy's got it. He's really. I never knew anyone that could actually sing. 'Cause I was a little boy. I mean, I knew what good singing was. I knew Ray Charles and Marvin Gaye. I knew what great singing was, but I didn't know anyone that could do it.
Yeah.
And here comes James, so it was obvious to me, that he was great. And we fell in together and we just started playing music together. And we're still buddies.
Yeah. Did it feel like everyone was connected in a way at that time? Because, you introduced James to Peter Asher, who helped him get on the Apple record on label with the Beatles. You went on to work with Carole King and obviously many others. So how close was everyone as far as like degrees of separation?
Well, the fact is that everyone knew everybody,
Yeah.
and everybody was pals with everybody, especially in LA in 68, 69, 70 when I moved out there. Everyone knew everybody. Everyone would come over to people's houses. They would exchange songs and listen to records and smoke weed and hang around and have a ball. And just it was a big community. And the record business major hustle hasn't started yet. So there wasn't all this pressure to sell records or to be popular or anything. It was just, let's play. We all wanted to be, we all wanted to do well in the music business, but in music, I should say. But It wasn't as competitive as it got later. And everyone, like I said, it was a big community. And
Yeah.
I was amazingly lucky to be at the right place at the right time and to fall in and to meet all these people. It's great.
Yeah, you grew up in New York, you spent time in England. You just mentioned about
No, I
moving
never,
on.
I didn't go over to England with James.
Okay, my fault.
When he
Uh,
went over there to get on Apple, I was still in New York playing with some band.
okay, fair enough. But you go out to LA in the late 60s. Did that represent something to you, or what did that represent to you? And is there a feeling of readiness, like this is I'm gonna go and try to make it? Did you feel ready for that?
No, not at all. I knew I was really getting tired of the New York scene, and when I was offered a job to play with a band called Clear Light, they had lost their guitar player, and they were in New York, uh, and they were auditioning guitar players. So I went down there and auditioned, got the gig, and was prepared to leave. New York was a dead end for me. The session scene was very closed. It was,
Yeah,
a handful of people were doing everything. A lot of it was jingles and commercials, and a lot of it was pit orchestras. I wasn't interested in any of that. I wanted to make history. I wanted to play with the greatest. So and I by that time I knew Carole. I had met Carole and was playing on a few of her demos. She had hired me to play on some demos, which was amazing to me. Because Carole was like working with her is like going to Harvard. And I learned a tremendous amount from working on her tunes and her demos. And of course, James was getting better and better and better. And it was just the obvious thing to do was to go to Los Angeles. And shortly after I got there, Peter Asher moved there, Carole moved there, uh, and it was the start of a community. And then James was out there a lot. James didn't like LA, but he was there because that's where everything was happening.
yeah.
And so away we went.
Yeah, you had the Tapestry album and Sweet Baby James, which came out generally around the same time. Obviously, now two of the greatest albums in history that people think about from that era, especially. What was it like working on those? And did you know then that we really have something here? Obviously, you're working with very talented artists, but did you know that the work itself would be something that would last?
Uh, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure if I knew it was great. Let me
Yeah,
put it like that. I knew two things, even as a young cat. I knew this stuff was great, but I also knew that didn't mean it was going to be successful. There's a lot of elements to being successful in the music business, the entertainment industry, that didn't necessarily apply to Carole or James. Carole, by the time Carole put out Tapestry, she'd already made two albums.
yeah,
One was called The City. There was kind of a trio: Charlie Larkey, Carole, and myself. Lou Adler producing. Went nowhere. The next one was an album called Writer, Carole King, which is a terrific album. A lot of great songs on it. By that time, it was a different producer. James was in LA and he played on it, and Russ played on it, and all of us started getting together. That also went nowhere. So at that point, I knew Carole was great. There was no question in my mind that she was great. But by the time we hit Tapestry, I didn't know whether it was going to go or not. This 2 hours before it had tanked. But Lou, he knew. Lou Adler, being a pop music genius, he knew that there was something there, and he set it up for it to succeed. The recording sessions, the picking of tunes, and the promotion of it. He was a genius at all that stuff.
what was the educational process like for you? Just getting to know the ins and outs. You are a songwriter, you were a musician, but to become a producer, to start arranging, how did that educational process go for you? How did you get good at that?
Well, I got if I did get good at it, I got good by watching Peter Asher and Lou Adler. Watching those guys, what they did and how they did it, and both those fellas encouraged a lot of participation from their musicians. Peter always would say, we'd do a couple of takes, and he'd look around at all of us and say, "Well, what are you thinking? Any idea?" So he expected all of us to think like producers, and so I learned a tremendous amount doing those sessions with Peter, and that's James. We did a Bonnie Raitt album, some Ronstadt, and that's how I learned, by paying attention and you know, like I said, finding the right part for the song, serving the song, the singer, the record. That's it. That's what you do. That's your job. So I got good at it because I had great training.
Yeah, obviously, you look at the list of the people that you've worked with, There's not any flashes in the pan there. There's not one album and out or one hit and out. Did working with Carole and James early on, how much did that raise your standards of just the people you chose to work with later on in your career?
Well, it raised them too high, I would say. I became very impatient. I started doing, all of us started getting called to do sessions because of the success of those two albums. But a lot of the stuff we were being called to do was mediocre. Record companies were signing every every quote singer songwriter there was, and most of them weren't very good. But they called us to pump up the jam, as it were, me and Russ and Lee, and we go in there, and I realized I thought I wanted to be a session musician, but if this means playing 80, 85% mediocrity,
Yeah.
this is so. I had a bad attitude, I must say, because I was so used to greatness, great producers, great songwriter, great musician, and I didn't want to do mediocre stuff that I didn't care about. I want to do
Yeah.
stuff that really did move me, and that I was really, that I was connected with. So I had a bad attitude.
Did you feel like financially, I don't know what the situation was at the time, but did you feel like you had to, as a session musician, take on more than maybe you wanted to? Was there a financial element of it? And was there a competition element to it where, if my name's not out there somewhere, I might get lost in the shuffle?
No, I didn't feel that way. That wasn't a conscious thought. I did want to do well at it, and I did want to be known as being good, uh, especially considering when I started doing record dates with other guitar players. I realized they were all better than me. All the session cats in LA, they could play rings around me. So I had to find my place, and I did. Found a way to play parts that were simple, basic things that helped the song. So, but I wasn't a good reader. For instance, I couldn't sight read. I used to be able to when I was in high school because I was studying music. But by the time I started doing sessions, like Carole would just give us what was called a lead sheet, just the chords, and a couple of bars and like that. So I was hired to make up my own parts. So that's what I did. I had no interest in anything that was on paper because I didn't want to play commercials
Yeah.
and bad pop music and TV scores. That's not why I learned to play the guitar. I wanted to be Steve Cropper. You dig? I want to go in the studio and make hits, but with the greatest all the time. And I was doing that with James and Carole.
Right.
But when a lot of the stuff was mediocre, like I said, at that point, I don't know. I started to lose interest in scuffling for it. But fortunately, I got kicked upstairs by the early '80s by getting hired by Don Henley to produce his stuff.
Yeah, and that's my guy, Don Henley. I've really loved him my entire life, and obviously many of the songs that you wrote. So, what was the genesis of your paths crossing and him deciding that this is a guy I want to write songs with, particularly?
Well, like I told you earlier, everybody knew everybody
Yeah,
back then, and everyone was having parties, Fourth of July parties, various things, and we'd all hang out together. And I got in a conversation with him at a Fourth of July party, and we hit it off right away. Then he realized he had to make a solo album. The Eagles had broken up, or at least
yeah,
were on hiatus, and he was talking to a bunch of different people in Los Angeles to collaborate with. And I knew he was going to call me. I just knew it. And sure enough, after a couple of weeks, he did. I went up there and played him some ideas that I had, musical ideas. And he said, "So, you want to work on an album with me?" Yep. And then, and that day obviously changed my life completely.
there's so many songs, and maybe this is just me because I've heard them all 7 million times, every Don Henley song, but particularly some of the songs that you've worked on. All She Wants to Do Is Dance, Dirty Laundry. We talked about You're Not Drinking Enough before this conversation. You
Right.
can recognize them one note, and I know what song this is. Was that a goal of yours when you're writing music for it to be instantly recognizable, especially songs that were on the radio?
I didn't think that way actually, but I did want the stuff to be very hooky, and I wanted to have a groove, a heavy duty groove right away.
Yeah,
And that's what I'm all about. I grew up listening to soul music, rhythm and blues, and that was my orientation. So if it didn't groove, I wasn't as interested in it as I would be stuff that was, I was into Al Green and Otis Redding and everything from Stax Volt, everything from Muscle Shows. That was my jam.
yeah,
And in LA, the popular stuff was country rock, which I didn't care about at all. Not that it was bad or that those weren't good musicians. It just didn't ring my bell. Coming from New York and growing up listening to jazz and rhythm and blues, I couldn't relate to country rock. Didn't mean a thing to me. But fortunately for Henley, he wanted to go a total different direction from the Eagles. So
Yeah.
I was the guy because I had no Eagles in me. In other words, I did not create that kind of music at all. I was the opposite of that. And
Yeah.
that's what he wanted. And that's why we, were able to create the stuff we did.
And then here comes the song that we've talked about, You're Not Drinking Enough. Not a huge hit for Dom, but just a wonderful song. But it's very deeply a country song. So
Right.
what prompted you to write that? And I guess even what prompted Henley to want to sing that? Because like you said, it's kind of a divergent path for both of you at that time.
Right. Well, yes and no. When I wrote the tune, I was starting to listen to a lot of, not a lot, but I was starting to listen to real country music. I was turned on a lot by J.D. Souther. Turned me on a lot of stuff, a lot of country. When I say country, I mean George Jones, Lefty Frizzell, real country music. And we had tapes in the bus where I had a George Jones tape of all his ballads, and we listened to that in the bus. And we were all kind of affected by that because it was great stuff. And it wasn't country rock, it was country
Yeah.
and pure stuff. So I was influenced by it. And I had this idea of You're Not Drinking Enough. I thought that was a funny thing to say. So I wrote it very quickly. That tune came out real quick.
Yeah, the words are great. Where did the I's come from at the
I
end?
don't know. I don't know. I don't know. You still about that. I don't know where they came from. I'm not Hispanic, so.
Fair enough. Everybody talks about Don Henley being a perfectionist. It sounds like you angle toward that a little bit too. You want things to be great. So did you align that way, or were there times where he was, I need this, this can be even better than what we've recorded?
Well, Don was, people talk about a perfectionist. I don't think that's accurate. I don't think he was a perfectionist. I think he was meticulous. And he went over stuff very carefully, especially his vocals. He wanted them to be perfect. He would do a take that sounded great to me. And he'd go, no, 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 I got to fix this. I got to fix that. Okay. To me, it was like, great. So I was nowhere near as much of I wasn't I wasn't as microscopic as he was.
Yeah.
And he also came with a lot of crazy ideas that we stuck on the stuff uh, that I never would have thought of. For instance, on Dirty Laundry, there's a break in there where there's a teletype machine. I never thought of that, but that's what he wanted. We got, a recording of a teletype machine, and we stuck it in there.
Yeah.
So,
I always wonder about those songs that aren't maybe not even singles or even released, like a song like How Bad Do You Want It? I like that song. When songs get put out and you write them, and maybe it's just they're deep cuts or only real hardcore fans are the ones that love them. How do you feel about that? Do you still take as much pride in those as some of the others?
absolutely.
Yeah,
And what I think is that people are wrong. They should love that tune.
I do. I mean, yeah,
How Bad You Want It is a badass track. I
it
think that
is.
I think if you hear that and don't get your toe tapping, if you don't dig it, something's wrong with you. That's
Yeah.
my opinion. But I have a big attitude about that. Whether it's a hit or not, if it's not a hit, it's because people are stupid.
Yeah, I don't mean to stick on Henley too much, but I'm a big baseball fan, and there's this stat in baseball called wins above replacement. And you wrote some great songs with some great words, but for Don Henley to sing those, it's not. I mean, I couldn't sing "How Bad Do You Want It" and obviously make it sound like Don Henley. So, how much did that enhance just what you did to have a guy like Don Henley on the track?
Well, everything, everything. He was an incredibly great singer and lyricist. I mean, he was one of the best ever. And I had been working with guys that were the best ever. James Jackson, Ronstadt. So, and he was one of the best ever. A fantastic singer. And he grew up playing in rock bands and soul bands as a singer, and he could do that stuff. He
Yeah,
could sing soul music, and so I love that about him. And he was a fantastic vocalist and a great, great lyricist too. So, and we were on the same page to a large degree. His record company did not understand at all what we were doing because they wanted him to do ballads and country rock and the same
yeah.
shit that he had been doing. That's one another reason I hate the music business. Is, no, we don't want to do the same thing.
Yeah.
We want to try other stuff. We want to grow. We want to experiment. We're not interested in filling your pockets with money. Go out and get a job. You want to make money, an honest job, not in the music business.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
we marched to our own drummer, and Don had Irving Azoff to run interference for us.
Yeah.
So we didn't have a budget. There was no budget. We just kept going.
And then,
Again,
that
because of
porch.
Don's popularity as an Eagle, and because of Irving Azoff. So whatever we wanted, whatever experiment we wanted to do, we did it. However much time it took, that's what it took. And some of that stuff was pretty elaborate.
Just while I'm fanboying on the Eagles, "Love in the 21st Century" by Glenn Frey, another real song I really enjoy. How did that come to be? Because you didn't
Well,
work much with Glenn.
I was pals with Glenn, and I played on his first solo album. Like I said, everybody knew everybody, and everybody was hanging out, and everybody
Yeah.
was talking about music, and we were all pals. So when Glenn went to do his first solo album, he called, I think Russ was on drums. He got me. I can't remember who was on bass, maybe Bobby Glaub, the great Bobby Glaub. And we had a ball. Glenn is a lot of fun to work with, and I really, really enjoyed working with him. Great guy. But that's also what tweaked Henley into wanting to make a solo album. He realized, here comes Glenn doing
Yeah.
this. Well, I better do something too.
Absolutely. And Henley's, that portion of his career kind of ends with "Into the Innocence." They go back to the Eagles. He doesn't make a solo album for quite a while after that. So what were you looking to accomplish? I know you worked with Bon Jovi. We talked about the stuff later on, even with Glenn, but what were your goals then, now that you'd been kicked upstairs, as you say? What was next? What did you want to be next?
Well, what did I want to be next? I wanted to have hit records, but I also wanted to have them with my friends. I wanted
Yeah.
to be the producer and hire my pals to come in and play and have a ball. I was interested in having fun. Now I know that's for some people that's sacrilegious. You're supposed to go there and get the down grind. I don't feel that way. So let's have fun, man. Let's do something that's fun. Let's light up the room. Let's light up each other. And obviously within the framework of a budget, but I wasn't interested in the grind. I was interested in having a ball and having that fun uh, be prevalent on the final product.
Yeah. And then, not
So
to
that's
fast
so
forward too much.
with John Bon Jovi, for instance. He called me because he was looking for a producer to make a solo album,
Yeah.
and he had talked to a bunch of different people, and my name somehow was on his list. He then called. I think he probably called Henley and said, "What's Cooch like to work with?" And he said, "Oh, he's a lot of fun." And so he got a call from. He called me. We talked on the phone, and I ended up getting the gig.
Who's the first person to call you Cooch?
I was like 10 years old, 10 or 11 years
Okay,
old.
fair enough. And I don't mean to fast forward too much. I just don't want to keep you long, but I definitely want to hit on the immediate family and the things you're
Great.
doing now with the other. It's almost a disservice to call them session musicians, because they're just so their own people. Leland Sklar, Waddy Wachtel, people like that. How fun! You talked about having fun. How fun is that?
Well, it's great. Like I said, those are all my pals. Those are guys I've been friends with and played music with for 50 years. So obviously, there's a deep friendship and camaraderie there, and an understanding of how to play music. With that band, with Russ and Lee and Waddy, I mean, you don't have to say anything. They just,
Yeah.
they listen to the tune. Everyone finds a part immediately, and we're off and running, because all those guys are very, very good at finding an appropriate part for any song in any circumstance. So we just fell into it very quickly.
And you put out an album as recently as last year with those guys. Is there more to come, I assume?
No, at this point, that band is moribund.
Okay.
The fact is, those fellas, unlike me, you see, once I started producing, I stopped doing sessions and I stopped touring, and all I did was produce. Those fellas kept doing gigs and kept touring. And Waddy, for instance, he's been touring with not with Stevie for, I don't know, 20, 25 years or something like that. Russ and Lee tour continuously with Lyle Lovett. And that's how they make their money. That's how they keep the lights on. Now, I was fortunate enough to make what they call mailbox money, which is money you make from publishing. It's from royalties, publishing and production.
It's got to be pretty good, though.
Right. So that's where my ambitions and my time went. When it's writing songs and producing and being on that end of the stick. Like Leland was one of the best musicians of his generation, without a doubt. Doesn't write songs, isn't interested at all in writing, isn't interested in producing at all. He just wants to go to the studio with his bass, plug in, start, make jokes with his pals, with his session buddies, all of whom he knows and all of whom love him. And, so give me a chart, play it, boom, and then go home. He's fine with that. That never would have worked for me.
Do you think, and I'm asking you to look in your crystal ball, but say music from the early part of this century or even now or the 90s, will it endure for 50, 60 years, forever, really? I don't see the stuff that you worked on in the 60s and 70s ever really going away. Is that something that's still possible with modern music?
Uh, well, that's a very subjective, judgment there. I hate to be an old fogey. Oh, everything sucks except what the stuff that we did when I was a kid. I hate to be that, but it's true. Tom Petty said everyone thinks the music they grew up with is the best music ever. He said, in my case, that's true.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Do you think any band can ever touch Sly and the Family Stone? No. I'm sorry. No. There's nothing on the radio, nothing anywhere that even comes close to Sly and the Family Stone or Creedence Clearwater or the Beatles, the Stones, obviously, the Kinks, the Who. No, there's no band can touch those guys.
Yeah.
Sorry. No one. So that music will last, I believe, for a long time because it's kind of, I hate to say this, but it's kind of American classical music or, it's the pop version of classical music. I don't follow modern pop music, contemporary pop music. I'm just not interested in it.
Yeah.
If one of my buddies or someone I respect turns me on to something, I'll listen to it. But most of it sounds spray painted, freeze dried, and run through the deflavorizing machine. I'm sorry. That style of production where everybody does it one at a time and then it's corrected and completely, put on the grid on Pro Tools. That doesn't light my fire. It just doesn't.
Well, I am beyond appreciative that you made time for this today. I know that you get a lot of these requests. I'm sure I've seen a lot of interviews with you over the last several days for sure, but I'm definitely appreciative. Thank you so much for sharing some of your experiences.
Great. Thanks. Thanks a lot. My pleasure.
All right, thank you.